Welcome to this explainer. When we think of Udaipur, the very first image that usually pops into our heads is one of serene lakes and gorgeous, luxurious palaces. But today, we're going so much deeper than that. We're going to explore how this masterpiece of a city was actually born from strategic genius, fierce independence, and honestly, some pretty incredible sacrifice.
Seriously, think about this. How did a desperate retreat from an invading army end up creating India's most romantic city? It's an amazing paradox, right? Udaipur's pristine, unplundered landscape, all those fairy tale palaces and tranquil lakes you see today, exists entirely because of a highly calculated, tactical retreat. The whole stunning setup is the direct result of a king making the incredibly difficult decision to abandon his ancestral home just to save his people and his culture. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap. We'll look at the founding of the Lake City, the immense valor at Haldigati, the creation of the city palace, and the beautiful gardens of the maidens, before wrapping up with Udaipur's lasting cultural legacy.
Let's kick things off with part one, founding the Lake City and that visionary move. Let's move along and see how this all builds. The story of this visionary move actually starts with a deeply human, honestly heartbreaking sacrifice back in 1537. Maharana Uday Singh II was just an infant when his life was threatened by a usurper. His devoted nursemaid, Panadai, saved him by doing the unthinkable. She swapped the infant king with her own son, Chandan. She literally sacrificed her own child so the royal lineage could survive. Because of her unimaginable loyalty, Uday Singh lived to found Udaipur in 1553. And this timing was absolutely crucial. Just 15 years later, in 1568, their previous capital, Chittorgarh, fell to the Mughal Emperor Akbar. All of this perfectly sets the stage for the legendary Battle of Haldigati in 1576. Now, packing up and moving the capital, that was a stroke of absolute military genius. Sure, Chittorgarh was an imposing fort, but it sat right out there on these vulnerable plains. It was completely exposed to the heavy armored cavalry of the Mughals, which naturally is why it had been repeatedly sacked. But Udaipur was naturally fortified by the rugged Aravalli Hills and safely tucked away in the secure Girwa Valley. Those steep hills made it pretty much impossible for armored Mughal horses to attack with any kind of effectiveness. Plus, you had Lake Pichola right there, providing a sustainable, totally abundant water source for the whole population. And, like all great historical decisions, there's a little touch of destiny involved here, too. Legend has it that while out hunting in these exact hills, Maharana Uday Singh II bumped into a holy hermit named Goswami Premgiraji by the shores of Lake Pichola. The hermit blessed the king and told him, "Build your new palace right on this exact spot," promising the city would always remain well protected. So geography and destiny just aligned perfectly. Moving into part two, valor at Haldigati and the conflict itself. 4. That is the number of hours the Battle of Haldigati actually lasted. Just 4 hours. The battle gets its name from the local soil, which is this striking yellow color, kind of like turmeric or haldi. But in just those 4 intense, incredibly bloody hours, this mountain pass witnessed one of the absolute fiercest fights for freedom in all of Indian history. By this point, Maharana Uday Singh's son, the legendary Maharana Pratap, was leading the charge. He was up against Raja Man Singh, who commanded the vastly larger forces of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Now, militarily speaking, the battle was kind of inconclusive, but morally, it was a massive victory for Maharana Pratap. It proved he was simply not willing to compromise his dignity and sovereignty for Akbar's favor. They were outnumbered, vastly outnumbered, but there was no way they were going to trade their independence for comfortable subjugation. And honestly, we simply cannot talk about Haldigati without mentioning Chetak. Chetak was Maharana Pratap's fiercely loyal horse. During the chaotic climax of the battle, Maharana Pratap was severely wounded, but Chetak, he carried his bleeding master miles and miles away to safety, even leaping over a massive river to escape the pursuing army, before ultimately collapsing and dying right there in the king's arms. It is such a deeply emotional story of loyalty that beautifully echoes Panadai's sacrifice a generation earlier. Which brings us to part 3, creating the city palace and the era of splendor. Now, what's really interesting here is this number, 400. That is nearly how many years it took to build the city palace complex. It wasn't just built in one go. It evolved organically over centuries, steadily growing right alongside the city itself.
Over those 4 centuries, get this, 22 generations of rulers seamlessly contributed to the palace. The final result, a massive 801-foot-long facade made of gleaming granite and marble that majestically rises 100 feet high over the eastern banks of Lake Petrola. It is literally breathtaking.
Because it was built over 400 years, the whole complex is this wild, incredible fusion of Rajput, Mughal, European, and even Chinese architectural styles. Inside this one giant facade are actually 11 distinct, interconnected smaller palaces. You have places like the Moor Chowk, which is famous for these breathtaking peacock glass mosaics, and the Kanchi Ki Burj, a stunning mirrored tower. But we have to remember, this is a city born from war, right? So even amidst all this luxury, they built in zigzag defense corridors. These sharp, really confusing turns were deliberately designed to stop surprise enemy attacks from gaining any momentum. Brilliant.
Moving on to part 4, the Gardens of the Maidens, or Sahelian Kipari. Now, what makes these 18th century gardens truly fascinating is the downright brilliant hydraulic engineering. First, water is drawn from the elevated Fateh Sagar Lake nearby. Then, it's meticulously channeled downwards, utilizing the natural slope of the Gurwa Valley terrain. And the result? Dozens of stunning fountains powered entirely by gravity. I mean it, absolutely zero mechanical pumps were used. They took a beautiful aesthetic feature and turned it into an absolute marvel of sustainable, pumpless technology. Right in the center of these gardens is the Sawan Bado Pavilion. This is such a delightful architectural trick. The water spouts are specifically designed to mimic the exact soothing sound and even the cooling mist of a heavy monsoon downpour. It provided the perfect cool respite from that harsh Rajasthan heat for the royal women, and it perfectly highlights the incredibly refined tastes of the Mewar court. Let's wrap up with part 5, a lasting cultural legacy and the soul of Mewar. So the crucial point here is that Udaipur isn't just some dusty museum of old buildings, it's a living, breathing cultural center. Take the Mewar Festival, for example. It coincides with the traditional Gangaur festival to welcome the spring. So this very day, you can go and witness stunning royal boat processions across Lake Pichola, carrying these beautifully dressed idols. Add to that the daily Dharohar folk dance shows at Mewar Ki Haveli, and you can see how this royal legacy is kept vibrantly, colorfully alive for the public today. And the city's spiritual roots? They run equally deep. The towering Jagdish Temple, built back in the mid-1600s, features a massive 79-foot spire that totally dominates the skyline. Inside, it houses an idol of Lord Jagannath that was actually carved from a single piece of black stone. There's this fascinating legend that Vishwakarma, the architect of the gods, carved the idol but left it unfinished because he was unexpectedly interrupted. Even today, there's a deep cultural belief that touching the feet of the deity here will cure your ailments. It's these spiritual anchors, along with the careful preservation of arts like Rajput miniature paintings, that really form the enduring soul of the city. And that brings us to our final thought. Just look at what was achieved here. A strategic retreat, followed by relentless bravery, allowed a people to build a sanctuary of unmatched beauty, engineering, and culture. If a city born from a desperate retreat can preserve its soul for over 500 years, what foundations are we building today that will echo centuries from now? It's a pretty fascinating thought to leave you with, right? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer of Udaipur's incredible history. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.